a letter that a gentleman was on his way to Helltown. His horse went lame, and he put it out to pasture. When he came back, he was highly upset. His horse was still there, but someone had stolen the bridle. So he wrote a letter to the head man here complaining that about the situation. This is probably a copy older newspaper than most of us around. There might be a few people here that were here in 1940, but this is, I wasn't. Those that were, my condolences, but on the solemn side, today, September the 11th, was a dark day for our country with the planes that went into the World Trade Center, into the Pentagon, and were crashed up in Pennsylvania. That being passed, which I don't like to dwell on, I'm going to read from Josiah Locke Dickinson's book, The Chronicles of Warren County. Almost all residents have been asked how the name originated. The people will give you varied answers. If you have Berryville, originally Battletown, so easy. Front Royal, where do you come up with Front Royal at? I heard that answer from back in the corner. Front the Royal Oak, that was one name that was kicked around. Another, this was at that time the Royal Frontier. The Royal Oak, everybody knows, was the King's Tree. Gentleman, a sergeant, was drilling the troops who probably and most likely didn't know left from right. When he wanted them to face left, which to him, he was say, front the Royal Oak. Well, they all knew what that was, so they all turned, looked right at him, got their attention by fronting the Royal Oak. And as I said, the Royal Frontier at that time. Originally, Front Royal was one word. It was later split down, nobody knows where. And really, when they went down to name the town, the gentleman that they sent down, they had names. None of them included Front Royal. So when it came back and they presented the paper to the people, where'd you get that at? You know, that's government for you. Oh, excuse me. We won't talk about the government. Tradition that it was known as Helltown. Josiah, he said that he had never seen this written down. Unfortunately, I have with, and I think most people here remember Laura Virginia Hale, who was famous for her red pen. She would underline things with this red pen. She would outline what she wanted cut out of a paper with a red pen. It didn't make any difference if it was a 2020 newspaper or if it was a 1820 newspaper. She still outlined it and had it cut out of the paper by someone. I know that because in our files of Laura Virginia Hale, which she blessed us with, and it was our beginning, I have the little cutouts out of the newspaper. I go over on the shelf, I pull out that newspaper from 1870. There's a hole in it. It matches up perfectly what's in her file. I wouldn't think of it myself, but she did. There's also the nearest approach to an undignified name of Helltown. It would have been called Loose Town, but it could have been loose as in L-U-C-E. And Bishop Francis Asbury, when he came through here in 1804, put in his journal, we came to Hands Ferry. Hands Ferry located over on the river, coming from Winchester, from the north. Went to Front Royal, or Loose Town, L-U-C-E town. He may have misunderstood what some disgruntled citizens called it, or since about a year later, he recounts we stopped in Front Royal or League Town. He may have not caught the name Lehue Town. I guess if you go into and study your genealogy, you'll find out that a lot of us, our names have been changed because the gentleman that was doing the census report, who was just a little bit better educated than who he was talking to in most instances, he changed your name because he wrote it as he heard it. So he might have left off a syllable or two, or he might have added a syllable to your name. And over the years, that's how things get changed. The same way as you came into the country, when you came into pass through the customs as it's known today, and they asked you your name. If you had a good brogue, they wrote it down as they heard it. May not have been right, but that's how we wound up with our name. An interesting early chapter, Chester Road, which came from Chester's Ferry out at Riverton. The court order and the line of travel from west to east, road from Funk's Mill to Chester's Ferry, into where the road takes off to Manassas Run. Manassas Run, Manassas Gap, Linden. Manassas Run is the creek that meanders down through Dismal Hollow and comes out down at Low Water Bridge. At that time, just a ford in the river. The main direct traveling, you came from Winchester, you came through and crossed Chester's Ferry, you came up through the town's oldest road, Chester Street. The main road into Front Royal originally come across the river from Riverton, Royal Avenue, underneath the railroad track, and that was before the railroad was there. Came up through, entered right into Chester Street, Main Street. You crossed over the Great Happy Creek, and you headed on north over Chester's Gap. There's no family here now by the name of Chester, but we have Chester Street and Chester's Gap. Could go down through Wapping. I don't know if anyone here knows where Wapping is at or not. He's shaking his head. Wapping is a small house down Linden. If anyone remembers, just recently we had a train derailment down there. Messed up the train tracks and slowed up traffic by my house coming on into Front Royal. Well, that was the main right out through town, down through Happy Creek Road, down through Dismal Hollow, through Linden, over and Linden, Manassas Gap, headed on to Washington. I'm not gonna go into all of this. 1748, Christopher Marr bought 400 acres from William Russell in February of 1754. He sold 200 acres of it, lying on both sides of the Great Happy Creek, to Peter LaHugh, L-A-H-A-U-G-H. Another name you'll find a lot of spellings of, and of course we all know that the LaHughs are still here. I'm not going to keep on. I'm use my 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions that I can try to answer, I sure will. I will invite you down to the Warren Heritage Society on Chester Street. Come down and visit. We're open from 10 o'clock to 4 p.m. Tuesday through Friday, back in the archives. I don't ever worry about where I work at. And we do genealogy or any other history that we can try to help you with. Thank you for the invitation.
Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
You mentioned Wapping. Of course, the Battle of Wapping was the last engagement of the Battle of Gettysburg. Have you guys done some research on that engagement and how it impacted the community?
We have done some research on the Battle of Wapping. There has been a ride or automobile trip involved in Wapping. Anyone that doesn't know the house, if you go down 66 and about mile marker 10, if you look off to your right, you'll see a white house with columns in front of it. That's Wapping. And it was, there was a mill located there on Manassas Run. It was a hospital, the Battle of Wapping. And a gentleman and his wife came in just probably a month ago, gave us a cannonball, which was found Apple Mountain, right in the site for the Battle of Wapping. I assisted a gentleman with some information on the battle, which, as he mentioned, was the last end of the Gettysburg campaign. And if they had not had the battle at Wapping and stopped the Northern forces, the war could have been over in Warren County instead of down at Appomattox, because he would have, McClellan, they would have cut off the Southern troops here on their right over Chester Gap. That's about all I can go for you on that one.
One comment about Wapping. When it was used as a hospital, obviously they had to take care of patients, and during that time there were a lot of amputations. And the smokehouse on that property was used for a lot of the remains that were tossed.
Discarded. That I can remember. I was born and raised in London, and had a good friend in school down there that lived down there at Wapping. And the only thing I can remember about Bobby was he came to school with his head bandaged up, and I asked him, this was on a Monday, and I said, what happened? And he said that him and his father had been fishing. And I said, well, what happened there? He said, well, I was fishing and I was really gonna throw it out. And said it went and stopped. And he put the hook in his head. And his dad got mad at him, and I think he just ripped it out of his skull. So I can remember Bobby and he said he lived at Wapping. They call it Wapping or Wapping, W-O or W-A, both ways. And it was not anything like that house that you see now has been added on to. It's like Bel Air. Bel Air didn't look like that back in the 1860s, the big tall colors in the front, and neither did Wapping.
Anyone else? Jim, thank you. I did want to point out that Melanie Gregory is also here. She is the office manager at the Warren Heritage Society, here to make sure that Jim told the right stories, I do believe. All right, we do have a 50-50 drawing since Doug is here today. And it is for $3, though the corner of this one is $2, so maybe $2.9. That goes to 631-8199. Yep. Back to you, Doug. Just real quick, board members, if you can just hang back for maybe 5 minutes, I appreciate it. And if you'll join me in the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first is it the truth? Second is it have a great weekend.